Hey, everybody, welcome out to the show. Today, we have a fantastic interview lined up who is a 30 plus year veteran of the tattoo industry who has written a book. It's called Showtime, and it is a fantastic read. I started to read it, I couldn't put it down. I highly suggest that you go out and grab it. We'll actually put a link in the description today to make sure you can go ahead and get yourself a copy. And with that being said, let's bring on Pim. Hello.
Well, hey, how are you today?
We got all the bugs worked out. We're ready to rock and roll. Thank you so much for joining us today to do this interview. Um, I know that you have a book out. We're going to get to that, but I want to give these guys a little bit of background about yourself. And I'm just going to throw some stuff at you. You fill it in and say, hey, you know what? Boom, boom, boom. And we'll go from there and we'll just hang out and talk.
Got it.
Cool. So I did not know this because I saw that you were from LA and Arizona, and then I started to read your book and I realized that you were from the UK. Totally floored. I was like, okay, cool, man. This is going to be a good read. And then you started to get into the punk rock scene, and I was like, man, oh, this is good stuff. I cannot. It was one of those books that I think that you and I talked, and you were like, hey, it's not a real heavy read. Don't worry about it. And I started to read it, and I was just like, I was hooked. And then I had to start setting up and doing other stuff. And I'm like, I can't wait to go back and read it. So why don't we start at the beginning, and then we'll work our way forward to how the industry is today, about your book, and, future things that you have lined up for yourself.
All right. Well, I mean, you basically said it all there for me. I did start I started getting interested in tattoos in Europe because I ran into somebody who was a tattoo artist, and this was in like 1987 in Gibraltar, actually, in the south of Spain. And I was a traveler, and I was a street artist, and just a punk kid, just trying to survive. And I was traveling around Europe with really no plan, no clue, no idea what I was going to do next. And then I heard about the tattoo artist, and I'm like, that sounds amazingly cool. I want to be able to do art and travel. And how do I get to do it? And so I asked him, and he said, well, don't be stupid. Girls don't do tattoos. That's ridiculous, And I was like, what? So I'm kind of one of those people that when you tell me I cannot do something, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I'm just going to be like, well, hold my beer, watch this. And so I kind of found ways to get into, shops, well, a shop in Gibraltar at that time, to try and be a scrub and help out and sneakily learn some things about the industry, because the guys were just like, women don't do this. You're stupid. Go away. And I got enough information from that to be able to go back to England, actually, and work and earn some money, and then basically bullshit my way into getting some equipment from one of the very few suppliers, and then go on the road in my own van in the south of Spain and teach myself, which was extremely hard, but there was no other way to do it. And then that got me to a point where I had enough skills to kind of get into a tattoo shop to be hired on by someone. And it was all kind of more who you know, not what you know at that time. Right. So I was very big on using the connections that I made along the way and just basically being like, hey, give me a job, and I mean, what's the worst they can say? No, right? So the book, I wanted to basically tell people all about that and explain that it used to be a lot harder to do these things, but also on the other side of it, to give people an inspiration that are sitting there right now feeling they're not worthy or they can't figure it out. It's like, it's 100 times easier now to figure out than it was back then. So, this is an inspiration to show you that, yeah, of course it's possible. It's possible from a field in Spain. It's possible now with all the accessories and the information that you have at hand, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that I caught off right off the bat was your story about the supply houses and stuff like that, and the fact that there were so little supply places back in the day. And you were working at that shop in Gibraltar, and you were doing phone orders and stuff like that. And then you got the guy's number and catalog, and kind of on the sly, figured out that, hey man, I could call this guy myself and kind of start rolling with it. Who was the original tattoo artist that you worked with at the beginning, though? You said it was like a traveling Englishman.
His name was Steve Smith, and he still tattoos to this day. He was an English traveler, and he traveled all over the south of Spain. And his connection to a tattoo shop in Gibraltar was what kind of got me into that first shop. But it was literally, to help the guys out while the sailors were coming through, because the aircraft carriers, the American aircraft carriers, would stop in Gibraltar, and there'd be thousands of guys getting tattooed. It was pretty common back then that the Navy, all the navies, kept tattooing alive in the port cities. And really, there wasn't much work outside of that. That's another thing that's important to remember, is that tattooing in the 1980s and 90s was not popular. It became popular through the 90s. But in the 80s, it wasn't, something that regular people did. It was very frowned upon. You get all kinds of shitty comments about your appearance and stuff. It was hard to be tattooed back then, and it wasn't popular.
Right.
So I was just reading a book by Matt Lauder called Painted People that talks a lot about that, and the way the perception of tattoos on people has been changed over the years and the decades. And the 80s was definitely not a cool time to be tattooed, right? It was. So that's changed a lot too, and that changed in the 90s with the advent of the conventions, which I also talk about in the book.
Yeah, Matt is a fantastic source for information. He actually kind of helped me out with a little snag I was in with the George Burchett interview that I did, and fantastic guy. But I know he's on point with a lot of his stuff that he puts out and talks about. So that's another great source of wealth for the tattoo history in this community. I know that you had said that you were involved in that punk rock scene for a short time, and was that where the interest kind of peaked for you?
Not really. We were just busy being punks and hanging out on the King's Road and getting drunk and spitting at tourists for money. People had tattoos, right? But we were literally just punk kids, And now, of course, I see some of Lal Hardy's posts. I've chatted a little with him online. A lot of the people that he tattooed back then were amongst us on the King's Road, So we saw a lot of the tattoos, and you wanted tattoos, but there were really no tattooers, and you didn't have any money, so.
Yeah, I got to meet Lal. He's he's amazing person. Probably one of the nicest people I've ever met. Welcomed me with open arms. Actually took me sightseeing, which was crazy. But he said to me that where he broke kind of big was I can't remember the female's name that he tattooed the side of her head, but there was somebody who took a picture of that, and boom, after that it was like like a whirlwind tour for him. It was that kind of like opened up the floodgates.
Well, punk was very I'm going to say often photographed, right? And then, of course, the next thing along with punk was tattooing and the music scene and everything like that. So yeah, he broke out in that time. I've met him at conventions. I've never actually personally sat down and chatted with him, but I hope to do so soon. And I will say that, guys like that, they've been immensely helpful to me with this book thing, and it was funny that writing a book like reopened a lot of doors from back in the day, because I didn't have a clue about writing books. I just up and wrote it because it was time to stop talking about it and do it, so
right.
It's been fun. It has been fun.
But there's one of the things that I see in your book that's a line that kind of goes through the whole story, is the fact that you had to grind the whole time. There was you never stopped. There was always fight, to the point where you talk about actually going and buying a BSA just so you can be involved with like that motorcycle crowd, because those are the people that were really getting tattooed back then.
Well, you had to have a motorcycle in order to be a biker. And of course, yeah. And as I say, it doubled as transportation. So how cool is that, right? Yeah, it was always just kind of put yourself out there. Even once I had a shop in Germany and whatnot, I still continued to do conventions and every show that I could possibly get into, because that was how you put yourself out there. There was no social media. There was no, I'm just going to post a thing online or have a website. What people have to really kind of get in their heads, which is hard to do nowadays, is that there was no internet, there was no iPhone, there was no little box in your pocket that gave you information, there was none of that. And to get out there, you had to go to the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then for us women, there weren't very many women tattooers in Europe at all at that time. But obviously, because women had never really been accepted into tattooing or put into the forefront of tattooing, we had to prove that we could do it, and so a lot of the potential clients would just be like, I'm not getting tattooed by a woman, and I've talked to a couple of the females from back in the day, like Sabina Gaffron. I had a phone conversation with her, and she was saying, do you remember when they would say at the conventions, they'd stand right there and they'd be like, who gets tattooed by bitches, Jesus, And that's not that long ago, right? That's really not that long ago. So you had to get out there and prove yourself. There was just no other way to do it,
And I also appreciated the fact that you threw homage to a lot of the generation before you by mentioning their names like Maud Wagner and Millie Hall and a list of others. And to me, that was very cool to see that and say, hey, like, this person actually took inspiration from the fact that she was a female tattoo artist and obviously wasn't accepted at that time and said, F you, I'm going to do it anyway. And then kind of carried the torch for those that came before you. And that to me is one of those things that I love. Anything that where somebody's like carrying that torch, and moving forward. So to me, it was just cool to see. I appreciated it.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, all of these people deserve mention, and it's not. I mean, before anyone gets the wrong idea, it's not a heavily feminist book by any means. But I did want to kind of. Obviously, I'm a female, so it leans that way. But I also wanted to point out that there had been women that really, did push tattooing before me, and it was hard. It was always hard. I'm not a real big tattoo historian. I'm not an old school tattooer as far as the American sense of that goes. I've just been around tattooing for a long time, and I know a lot of people. But I don't necessarily know verbatim all the history that some of these old school American tattooers do, or Lal, for example, or these people that do the research, which I'm heavily appreciative of, But certainly for the female tattooers, I think the one that most impressed me when I read about her was Jessie Knight. I mean, she sounded absolutely awesome, and I wished I would have had a chance to meet her, Mm-hmm. She just had a lot of personality, and she was a sharpshooter. She didn't take shit from anyone, and she tattooed in England for a very long time and pushed to the point where they had to respect her. She just, she wasn't giving up. She wasn't going away. But the stories of what she had to go through were quite impressive, as far as like how much, the men talked shit about her and just put her down and tried to steal her shit, and so yeah, that I think is an important aspect of it. It was much harder for women to come up back in the day and to be in any way taken seriously, in tattooing.
And just so everybody knows, it's not like a preachy feminist book at all. I didn't mean to imply that. So anybody that's watching right now, buy the book, goddammit. It has nothing to do with that.
No, I'm just saying that it wasn't that you really leaned on that, but I think a lot of the guys, they're like, oh well, women. There's a lot of women in the book, and I'm like, there's guys too, though. I mean, there were. I appreciate everybody that ever gave me any kind of helpful hints when I was trying to learn back in the day, and a lot of those were men. I mean, so I don't discount men in this at all. I've been, surrounded by men in a male-dominated industry for 30-something years now, and everybody's valid. We're all human beings, and finally, I think we've gotten to a point where women are, actually accepted as equals, in the trade, and that's made things a bit easier. But
yeah, I mean, I would think that that's the case now. I mean, just going to different conventions and seeing the amount of talent and the amount of females that are represented there, it's, I would definitely say that that's not a thing anymore.
No,
I also, it was very cool for me to read your book and then you kind of just like throw names of the people that helped you as you went along. And then you kind of gave like a little background for some of the people. And to me, it made it like it sucked me into the story even more, because then I was like, oh, well, what about this guy? Like, you know what I mean? So like, it was a solid read, and you could definitely see how bad you wanted it and how much effort you had to put into a craft that you love, that you've been doing for 30 plus years. I mean, did you ever in your mind think it would be as big as it is right now?
Oh gosh, no. I mean, I thought, during the 90s, it seemed to me that that's when tattooing had its biggest amount of growth. It through the conventions, I think it was, and I did some traveling. But again, through the conventions, I met Philip Liu in Lausanne. I went to visit his shop down there, his family shop. And he basically told me, if you want to know more, you've got to go to North America. And so
Mm.
I connected with Crazy Ace and went over to work in Toronto and in Canada, and started to see a little of what was going on in North America in the early 90s. I think it was like 94. And in one of the shops I worked, I got to watch people like Eddie Deutsch, who were at the forefront of, making art, tattooing an art form, like an amazing art form where people looked at his stuff and were just like, holy crap, right? And this was what I had been looking towards. Because sure, anyone can put like little, flash tattoos on people, but to turn tattooing into a complete body art form and use the body as a canvas was something that really only started to kind of come along in our world in the mid 90s, and the conventions were the superhighway for that information. And I think everybody that tattooed in the 90s was a part of that. We all had our little piece, everybody was working towards different things and spreading information in their own different ways and building this amazing platform, which now people just take the ball and run with it. And tattooing has some of the most amazing artwork out there that you would ever have imagined seeing. It's quite
Yeah.
incredible. But did I think it was going to be this huge? No, hell no, absolutely not.
I just spent the weekend in Norfolk, and had the opportunity to interview Dana Brunson. That I'll be putting that together soon, and a couple other serious veterans, let's call it, of the industry. Actually, the craft. I know a lot of people don't like it when you call it industry. So, um, and I think a lot of those guys were surprised at how crazy it got as well. And then they also talked about the fact that, like, at one point in the United States, there was only like 300 tattoo shops in the United States in the like the 70s and maybe even into the 80s. And now it's just like boomed, and there's shops everywhere. And times have changed, and some of the old ways just don't cut it anymore. The people can open up shops on top of each other, and it's just the times. But they also appreciated the fact that the art has changed as drastic as it has. Um, we have some amazing people out there doing work that is mind blowing. But I still go back to the old school American traditional look. You know what I mean? That's just kind of how I guess I relate to it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that the advent of the internet and social media has had a massive, massive influence on all of that. And I do point that out in the book at the beginning that, in my opinion, the world basically changed when the iPad came along and the iPhone and, this massive ability to be able to connect to other people easily across the world without having to use the phone or the email, or send a letter. Um, and books. I mean, we used to have hundreds and hundreds of reference books, and now you can just type it up on the internet and find it. And so modern tattooers just have this wealth of information at their fingertips, and we never had that, right? We had to actually talk to each other and send letters and buy books and go to the library and all this stuff and draw like relentlessly, like figure things out by actually putting it on paper. Yes, paper, right? Whereas now you have the iPad, you have AI, you have like a wealth of information and useful, digital libraries of pictures and just all of this. I mean, I think if it hadn't changed to what it is now, there'd be something wrong in a way, right?
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I mean, everything has to evolve at some point. It's,
mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people just are resistant to change. But I think that there's good and bad of things that have changed. But I also feel like you just said about, you know, internet and the iPads, and it's now, instead of advertising in magazines and going to conventions and just spreading the word about yourself or your art, now you could just post a picture and boom, there it is. Now everybody knows who you are. And I guess that's a good thing. It's also brought about some, I would consider, shady stuff. People doctoring pictures and,
Mhm. Agreed, yeah.
but we don't have to get into that.
That's not right. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
trickery out there on many, many levels, right? There's as much disinformation as there is information, I think, and people have to be careful which side they take on that, right? And I think the biggest thing that I see as far as all that goes that I don't particularly care for is this new narrative of, the gatekeepers and how old tattooers suck and all this kind of stuff, and we don't have any relativity to the new ones. And I don't agree with that. I think I would like to kind of make a different perspective on all of that, and part of that through this book, right? That we have things that we can teach the young people, and the young people also have things that they can teach us, right? Because you can learn something off of everybody, right? Um, you can learn from someone that just started tattooing. You wouldn't think you can at this point, but you can. So I think it's important for the older people to stay in contact with the younger people, and vice versa, that we're all part of this thing. And we shouldn't be kind of pushing people off into a separate corner and just being, oh, they're old, they're obviously a gatekeeper, because it's not true,
Right, right. Now, so you came back from Spain. You were back in the UK, and you kind of started to dig into the craft. You got a hold of some supply companies and were able to buy some stuff for yourself, and essentially practice on friends and whatnot. Where was the official first shop that you worked at after all that?
Well, after all of that, I mean, I was basically, scratching in people's apartments like you do when you don't have a choice. And then I kitted out my van and went traveling in the south of Spain, and worked out of that van, got caught up with the Gypsy Carnival and traveled with them for a while, which was fun. And then I think the first shop that I actually officially worked in was a place in Reims, France, which is owned by Arno. And he still owns it to this day. And he was part of the local festival organizers, and I met him through the photographer, Raphael Hell, who knew these people and took me to meet him. And he was like, I started teaching myself in 85. If you'd like to hang out, you can. And I did. And he was super influential and helpful to me. And I worked in his shop for a little while. But, again, to understand, like, as far as working in shops back then, there was very, very little work to be done. So, it was just a kind of case of picking up scraps and working on people you could talk into it and stuff. And I actually did more work on the road with the carnival than I did in the first tattoo shop I was at,
Okay.
So, yeah.
So after that, then I guess I'm trying to figure out. I know you came to North America, but
In
did you walk?
2001.
Okay, so there were shops in between that, then, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the book itself, I mean, once you read the whole thing, it kind of becomes more clear. Is the first 13 years of my career where I actually worked exclusively pretty much in Europe, except for a couple of conventions overseas. And so I wanted to finish it right there when I left Germany, because it just made it a neat kind of ending, right? So it was pre-internet, pre all of that. It was pre my stint in the US, what I do now. And yeah, so I worked in several shops in Germany. Then I worked a couple of conventions overseas and started working conventions in Germany, actually, in 1992. When I was working for a man named Kevin Heath in Exclusive Tattoos, Schwäbisch Hall, which is still open to this day. And so he introduced me to the convention circuit. And then eventually I opened my own shop. I had an opportunity to take over a shop in 95, which I did. And then after that, it was just all go, because it was full convention circuit, lots going on in tattooing, just basically balls to the wall, get after it, let's see what this can go, right? And yeah, it was easier to my own shop at a certain point, right? It was just difficult working for other people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that most artists, want that strive for that. I would say at least 90% of artists are always like, okay, man, I want to open up my own shop. I want to be my own boss because I am not a tattoo artist, but I'm friends with a lot of tattoo artists, and it's always that freedom thing.
No, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's a lot of work too, you know.
Right.
Um,
You get into it because, I want to be my own boss and I want to have freedom, but then you realize you're working probably twice as hard to
right.
keep your own business afloat and to,
There's a
promote
whole lot of
some things.
mechanics that go into that, right? I mean, it's probably the same as the music business and whatnot, where you have to get good teams of people together, otherwise it just doesn't work. And then you're constantly doing, kind of clean up after stuff like that when it doesn't work well. And working for other people was fine. I mean, I learned a lot from that, and I didn't really have any horrible experiences, but it definitely was a point where it was easier for women tattoo artists to have their own shop than to put up with this constant barrage of like women don't do this or whatever it was in whatever way, which started to get better as the 90s went on, but it never really fully went away until probably 2000 or so, so it was just better to be in charge of your own environment.
Right, right. I also, appreciated the details that you gave about, I don't know, the experience of being an apprentice, um, especially for how it was back then for you. I think that apprenticeships now are different than they were back then by, a lot
Yeah,
from,
I don't know. I never had an apprenticeship, and then I've never had an apprentice, right? So, I mean, I was helped along, I would say, but I was never anybody's apprentice, because nobody wanted to apprentice me, or very few people, in fact. Like, I think you're probably talking about where it says in the book that, if you went into a shop and asked, they'd literally run you out of there. Like, you had to
mm,
have connections, or you weren't getting in. It was very, very guarded. It was very protected. And if you were scratching and the local tattooer found out, they would take your shit. I mean, there was no two ways about it, right?
right,
Um, but I never wanted an apprentice. I mean, I see people do that because, well, they need help in the shop, they need this and that. And I just felt that I wasn't, really in a position to teach people. I just was too busy, didn't have the time for it, none of that, and so I never bothered having an apprentice for myself because it just didn't speak to me. And nowadays, I'll find kids that I feel have heart and spark in the thing and desire to really move on, and fun, polish them out, like mentor them. But I don't want a personal apprentice; it's like too much work.
I got you. I got you. I think that, so you're talking about mentoring other artists now, but it's more of a polish. It's not starting from scratch. If you had somebody come up to you these days and say, "Hey, how do I get into this?" Like, what would your advice be? How would you steer them?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of talk about all the different ways at this point. I definitely think that having a proper apprenticeship is a good thing to do. But when I say proper, I think those are hard to find because now I see a lot of shops where they basically just take someone that has bare minimum skills and then run them up to a level that's acceptable so they can charge them booth rent and make money for the shop. And I don't really think that that's okay. I think if I found someone that had incredible talent, then I would probably be more interested in teaching them. But I think there's also a huge amount of information that's out there, as we were saying, which you can find anywhere you want on the internet. I mean, when I see people online crying because they can't find information, I'm like, you're not looking in the right places, right?
Mhm.
You can learn to draw, you can learn to do amazing drawings, you can learn to tattoo well, you can learn more and more about how to tattoo better. I mean, it's just all there, right? It's not. So I don't know. I mean, there's this big conversation about how if you don't have an apprenticeship, you suck. And I don't agree with that. But I'm not saying that everyone should run out and teach themselves either. I mean, I feel very strongly that this whole thing of buying equipment off the internet and having it roll up on your doorstep is not a good thing because there is no instruction booklet that comes with it about bloodborne pathogens and how to work cleanly and hygienically. And I think that is the ground step that anyone should take that is considering getting into tattooing, is how to do it cleanly and hygienically and properly. And that's before you even start thinking about art. It's a
Right.
huge responsibility to be hygienic.
And I think it's also responsible for essentially scarring somebody if you screw up. I mean, like you said, there's no instruction books with it. So if you really don't know how to operate a machine, you could potentially, do some damage.
It's true.
Also, with the access to Temu and Amazon, and there's a lot of people buying like fake inks out there. We've talked about on our live stream where there's been fake Chinese companies that have slapped the labels of reputable businesses on their stuff, and people get sick and all kinds of nasty things that you hear about, and it's just it's not a good situation. I
And
think
there's
that
some horribly, horribly bad tattoo equipment out there for sale. I mean, even just cheap Chinese needles can be really, really bad and difficult to work with for a professional, let alone, someone who's just starting. But I mean, having said all of that, I started in a similar place. So I think it's part of the integrity of the person to do their homework on what it takes to do things properly before they start on their friends,
yeah, that
a certain amount of background information necessary, right?
you also had the in though too. Like you had the proper supply company.
No, but the thing is, like I had to call them and get them to sell me stuff, and you couldn't buy anything from China because China was still a communist country tucked behind the Russia on the world map, right? So, um, but what I had to do was call the guy, and everybody knew everybody, right? So he knew that I wasn't a tattooer. He would know, and so I was basically just bullshitting my way through the conversation, just being like, please say yes, right? Um, but yeah, I stole the phone number and I stole the catalog, which was frowned upon, of course, but there was no other way to do it, right? And I had learned how to make needles in that shop, which was a good thing. I knew a little bit about tuning machines, so I practiced until I found out more about it. But that's a whole different world from what's now, where you can just literally order up the actual pen machine and
Yeah.
pre-made cartridges or whatever. So at least now that part of it is a little more safe, quote unquote, as far as the newbie tattooer. Um, but there's still like, I don't know, like I said, I think for me the most important thing is how to be clean and have the integrity to do that and learn that. And I'm a little worried about all this access to the equipment without access to that type of information.
I have to say though, that anxiety that you projected in that book when you were writing that was on point. Like I almost felt like anxious with you while you were talking about calling the guy, and like
Right.
it it blows my mind that you're not really a writer and
No.
you were able to lay down some amazing work in this book. Like how long did you how let me back up with that. How long did you work on the book before you actually like kind of started really going into motion, or did you just sit down one day and just start?
Well, years ago, like in 2001 or something, I was in Seattle, and I visited Madame Lazonga's shop up there, and I was chit chatting with her about my start. And she's obviously a very long time tattooer too. I think she just celebrated 50 years.
Wow.
Um, and she was saying like, you should write this down as a great story. And I'm like, yeah, nobody will ever read that shit, whatever. But it sort of planted a seed. So for years I was thinking about it, and then I started talking about it. And there's a lot of people out there that talk about writing books, and of course never do it. And eventually I just got sick of hearing myself say I'm going to do this. So my friends wanted me to house sit in Roatan, Honduras, and I don't know anybody there. And when I went there, I was like, you know what, I'm going to write this book. And so I just literally pulled out my tiny iPad and started writing it. And I was completely shut off from everything. So there was no one calling me. There was no one bugging me. There was no dogs barking. There was none of that, right? So it took me about 3 weeks to write it. And I just sat down and wrote it. And that was that.
Wow. And it opened up a floodgate of memories for you, I'm sure.
Well, it did. And the fact of being, not having any outside influence was that I could literally sit there and make a note or two about the time, and then sit there and really immerse in it and think about it, and be like, yeah, this is what was happening then, or these people. Or so the memories kind of kept flooding back. But it was very important to be completely isolated in order to be able to do that. And I don't have any writing background of any kind. But I just figured, well, shoot, and then I had a professional editor go through it, and she really didn't put too much red pen marks on it. So I was like,
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
So you must have been pretty on point at that,
Yeah.
I've actually seen, Chuck Eldridge promote your book.
Mhm.
I've seen some other people promote your book on the Instagram account that you have. Um, and you're getting pretty good high praise for this book.
Well, it's good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you and I connected and had a chance to talk about this, because to me, I think it's one of those books that anybody that's starting out in the business or is maybe even new to the business really needs to sit down and read it and really understand, what it took for you to become where you're the artist that you are today, and to fully understand the trip that you had to take.
Well, I think everybody sort of takes that to a point, right? I mean, people I've talked to that say, "Well, I kind of had a similar experience," and it's like, yeah, I think as tattooers and people that want to learn, we all do have similar experiences per se, as far as not being able to get it right, struggling with things, losing sleep over what it might look like. And I think, when Chuck and Mr. G both said the same thing, they were like, everybody that wants to learn to tattoo or is starting in tattooing should read this. I was a little surprised at first, but then I was like, yeah, I do go through quite clearly a lot of things that if you're starting out and you need some helpful hints about it, you could read that and it would be helpful to you. And globally, just that. It sort of follows the path of the things that you need to do, I think, in order to be successful at it as well. And also, I just think there wasn't a book like that, right? I mean, we had Margot Mifflin's book about women and how they got into tattooing. And I listened to a podcast with her where she said, I wish someone would write about it. And I was like, well, hey, look it, I did.
There you go.
And that's kind of, but not just for women in general. I think there's very few books that actually go into the story of someone learning to tattoo and going through their initial career. So I figured it had a bit of an opening for that, and it's there are no categories for it on Amazon, as I have found out. So I must be right.
So that was going to be my next question for the people that are listening right now. Where can they go and get your book?
Everywhere that we're selling books right now. I mean, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Waterstones, like all over the place. It's available in print, online as an ebook. The audiobook's coming out next week. You can get it from me if you want a signed copy. So it's pretty out there.
Okay.
And just hope that it has a enthusiastic reception. Let's just put it that way. Because I mean, it's not because I want to make money. It's not because of my story. I just think that it's something that's kind of cool for tattooing and the history of tattooing, just to document, how to be a tattooer from a different era, kind of thing. And that's all. I just hope people enjoy it. Right.
Cool. And like I said at the beginning, we'll make sure we put links to your book in the description. So
Appreciate
anybody that
it.
wants to go ahead and purchase it, we can
Mm.
point them in the right direction.
Perfect.
I
And give it to your
know.
friends.
Yeah. I know that you recently just did a podcast. I didn't catch who it was with, and
Matt.
I know that you're going to do. You're lined up to do the Honest Tattooer podcast. Great guys. They have a phenomenal show. Where do you see the next level of this going for you?
Well, people keep saying that they're wanting more and they would like to have another edition of it, which brings me to, when I came to the States and started tattooing over here. And so I probably will move towards writing about that as soon as I get done marketing this one. Because, I have more stories to tell. I mean, I don't really want to, like you mentioned earlier, I don't want to start poking at modern tattooing per se, but I have a lot of stories that can go into the last 20 years that don't really kind of make people all triggered. So that would be good.
Yeah. You don't want to poke the bear.
Not really, no, no point at all. Like I said, I wish people would just learn to get along and understand that we're all in the same thing for the same reasons, and we should be able to have conversations that don't involve, starting fights with each other about dumb shit.
Yeah,
On so
yeah.
many levels.
I so I know you were in LA and now you're in Arizona.
Sacramento, actually. I had a shop in Sacramento in
Sacramento.
2001 at River City Tattoo. I opened up there. And I go to Sacramento regularly and do guest spots on people I've been tattooing for many years. I work conventions. I don't really do much tattooing in Arizona. I mean, I did find out why it was that all the old timers at the national conventions walked with sticks and had giant, big old glasses on, because tattooing takes a huge toll on your body. It really does. And my hands are suffering, and I've had several back surgeries, and I sold my last tattoo shop right before COVID, thank God. So I haven't really gone back into wanting to run a shop or anything like that, because it's just a lot of energy. So I'd rather write books and visit people, talk to people, tattoo conventions, go to my sailboat, that kind of shit, have
I
some
hear
fun.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I
I
can
was
be got a hold of. If you want a tattoo, get a hold of me. I'm all over the internet at Pim Tattoo.
There you
So
go, and we will make sure we put your Instagram on the in the description as well, so people can reach out to you. Um, I think that you got yourself a pretty badass book, and to be honest with you, you're talking about writing another one. I would definitely be interested in hearing another tale that you spun, because, like I said, it was. I'm not a huge reader. I got to be honest with you, and I couldn't put your book down. So that ought to tell you right there. I mean, I'm very like ADHD. Like it's hard for me to read a book. So for me to actually read and be like, hey, it's different when I'm doing research, because it's like, okay, I'm digging in, and I got to make sure I have all my distractions off. So for me to like sit down and read a book is tough. And I couldn't put your book down. So it's pretty awesome. And
yeah, I'm Irish. I'm a storyteller, right?
hey, whatever it takes these days, if that's what it is, and I look forward to seeing you on some other podcasts to talk about it. And the name of the book is called Showtime.
And the audiobook is coming for people like yourself that don't care to read.
Ah, there you go. And you're gonna have that also on your site and on Amazon. And
Yeah, it's just literally waiting for the Amazon gods to decide whether or not it's good enough to upload right now. So hopefully by the end of the week we'll have got through that.
awesome,
Um,
awesome.
yeah, and as I said, I mean, I tried to make it an easy read. I want people to read this. I want the story to be out there, and I made it super easy, and no big words, and no need to have a degree in tattooing to understand it. So it's kind of partly written for the general public to get an insight into what we do as professionals, so that they can understand a bit more about it. Because I feel like the public are fascinated about it, and not all TV and media outlets actually portray the realistic side of things very perfectly. Let's just put it that way, right? There's a lot of spin on it. So I felt it
Yeah,
was important that people could actually get to the bare bones basics a little more easily too.
awesome.
So,
Um,
yeah.
I'm super amped that I had an opportunity to talk to you today, and I
Well, thank
can't
you.
thank you enough
Likewise.
for doing this. And good luck. Good luck with the book. I hope it sells 1 million copies and it inspires you to write that second one.
I will be working on it. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.